What's going on, everybody? Doc from Average Gamer Guys back yet again, and finally back into some Halo Wars 2 action. And here's what we're doing today. We're going to do a Pavium 1v1 Blitz deck guide. I've been messing around. I've actually really started to enjoy him as a leader, and this is the deck I've been using, and having some success. So I'm going to talk through this here real quick, and then on the back end we're going to do one quick game just to kind of show some of the mechanics. So I'm not going to delve too deep into this for the majority of it, because it seems like the good banish cards always seem to stick around, and we stick to the fundamentals, at least my fundamentals, for what I found to be successful really since the start of this game came out. So you've got yourself the Chopper, the Hunter, the Banshee. You've got a lot of very specific cards that you're going to always have. You always got to have the Chopper to be able to go out low energy cost really quickly, grab you some energy to win the energy fight. You got your Hunter, obviously, because you want to have that capability to be balanced. I always like to be balanced. I always like to have a counter for everything. You've got your Banshee and your Engineer, two great units. Banshee one, just a good all-around unit. You got to have your Engineer just for the capability to heal. I've always really enjoyed the Grunt Mob ever since I started using it. You get some synergy here with the Lich, with the Wraith Lich that you can get at the beginning. Suicide Grunts, great kind of spam unit counter. Blood Fuel Locust, I don't think I need to say anything else about that card. It's just super good. Really enjoy the Prowling Reaver as always, just for that anti-air aspect. So let's break into the things that are different for this deck, because like I said, a lot of similarities to a lot of other banished decks that I run. You want to have a good power curve. We have that. Rain of Fire is the first of the new cards for Pavium that we're going to use. I love this card. I love this leader power. This is the only leader power I have in the deck. And the reason I like this so much, the damage output is very well set up and placed for an 80 energy card. This is a very fast firing, direct damage dealing leader power. It has a good AoE for 80 energy, and the fact of how this actual leader power works is the fact that it kind of shoots out in a concentric circle. It moves into the center, and the fact is, if you drop it in the center of some units and have it run, it's going to do quite a bit of damage even if the units are fleeing out of it. And at 80 energy, you can't pass it up. The second card you see up on screen here we have now is the Ironclad Blisterback. I've not always been a fan of using Blisterbacks in 1v1 situation. The fact that this has Ironclad though, and really allows you to set up really solid defenses on the ridges, it allows, you'll actually see in the gameplay a little bit, I set one of these up. I set this up with two Blood Fuel Locusts, which are kind of my initial ridge defense setup. The fact that then this allows all of those units to take a beating, to absorb any type of suicide or blast units, makes that an easy inclusion in the deck. And then of course we have to have our hero unit, and Pavium has proven to me to be quite good. So he has a good range attack. He's really not bad against any specific unit. I'm not the biggest fan of his leader power, his Y ability, target designator, although it is pretty good if used against a high health target, or something that you absolutely need to take down, maybe that you're kind of weak to at that moment. The fact that he has Reflect on top of Shield is also really good, so you can use him as a decent range unit. He does have some pretty good range, but if he does get into the mix, the Reflect damage that pushes back off of him is actually going to be pretty beneficial as well. So 240 energy, he's definitely the top, but you can afford that. And I think that's a really good way to set the deck up. Obviously, we do want to take a look. Again, good energy curve here. We run 11 units to 1 power. That's pretty typical for me. And I do like the Vanguard Wraith starting army here. The sole fact of the Vanguard Wraith is actually quite good. You get a Hunter and you get the Elites with Detect, so you get some good capability to do very rounded out damage. That Wraith Vanguard has a ton of health and shields as well, so definitely a good unit. And you'll see here with this is a great first starting army to be able to go lock down your initial point. I've always really felt that any of the garrison units, even the bunkers, have always been, really strong. So I think that starting army is, a pretty easy pick. I don't like the indestructible, which you see up here on screen now. Although I mean, 2 engineers, and then you get the guard, ironclad blisterback. That's really solid, but what that doesn't allow you to do is 2 things. It doesn't give you anything to go pick up any energy, and gives you no real capability to lock down a point initially. You can obviously keep the blisterback in the air, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think you get the full potential out of it. So if it's me, I'm starting with the Vanguard army, and that's what I'm using. Just looking at a few quick cards that you could consider if you're not the biggest fan of some of my selections. Lich Vanguard could obviously take the place of actually your Ironclad Blisterback. It is going to be a little bit more expensive, but the AoE on it is really good. It's a very solid card, does a lot of damage. You obviously, again, can bring in the Wraith Invader, which is really solid, but you'd have to kind of gear that towards a little bit different army composition and setup. You'd obviously have to run more, kind of infantry. I won't call it spam, but more infantry focused. You can absolutely do it with this deck. The Banished have a lot of good capabilities to be able to do that. You'd obviously want to get some of your, elites in there. You would want to look at maybe even doing just standard grunts as well, just to kind of round yourself out. But so that's kind of a different way you could take the deck, but as it sits right now, this is what I'm using. Again, you can see a very steady curve, really from 20 all the way up to 60. I never feel like I'm out of position to play here. I've got good counters for everything. I've got Wraith, the Ironclad Blisterback, and then Pavium to round out the top end once you start to win that energy fight. And yeah, it's worked out good. I really like it in the 1v1 setup. I would do a few things different. I would go a little bit heavier on the energy curve if I was playing 2v2 or 3v3, but we're going to jump into a game. I don't want to take a lot of time, so I'm going to fast forward through it, but you'll see some of the strategies, and I'll just kind of talk through how I like to use this deck. Again, the first thing I like to do, get this Wraith Invader, and I know it was called in a Vanguard earlier, so I apologize. Get that Wraith Invader in there and just get it to lock down a point. Typically, I don't usually like to go to B just because it's so heavily contested, but in this, with that unit, it's so good at being able to deal the damage and then lock down the point. It has so much health, and then in conjunction with the Hunter and the elites that you put inside of it, it's really hard to take down and pretty intimidating for the most part in a lot of situations. So you're going to see here, I do like to use the Banshee up front. I like to get it into the mix as well. I'm going to use Rain of Fire here just to kind of decimate this initial little army that he's got kind of sitting up, just so I can get into the fight and kind of get myself at least contested, so I'm not foregoing a lot of points here at the beginning. But you're going to see here he's calling in a lot of troops. I'm doing a lot of damage just to try to get a focus on taking that thing out. Obviously, we do still have the units inside of it once it does go, and essentially I'm just kind of playing a little bit of a distraction technique here, where I'm calling in, like I said, my initial fight to hold the ridge there being the Blood Fuel Locust, because it does come in at 80 energy. I'm going to use my grunts here pretty effectively, my grunt mob pretty effectively with that rush ability to get in there, 1, lock that point down, and then 2, go and grab my energy. That is the other real big reason. If you haven't ever watched any of these before, you know I'm a big fan of the grunt mob because of rush, and because you get 3 separate units that are very capable of moving around the map and getting you the capability to pick up some pretty good energy. So at this point, like I said, I'm expanding. I'm trying to stay close as far as the points are concerned, as far as the capture zones are concerned. But my biggest thing that I'm trying to do here is really just win the energy fight. Now, I'm going to get kind of a cheeky move. I don't know what else to say. That's why you bring Suicide Grunts in, folks. I literally just decimated his entire army with the 60 energy unit, and the rest of my units really did some cleanup. So now I've got total control. He is going to fight me here back on A, which is totally fine, because what that allows me to do really is just focus and get my setup here really going on B and C, and I don't even really have to focus on C that much, for the sole fact that now I've got 2 blood fuels. I've got the Ironclad, which again, not always the biggest fan of, but it seems to work really well in this deck. I've now got almost a perfect setup sitting above the ridge. I've got B and C very well locked down, and now it's really just a matter of time. It's a matter of time calling in units. It's a matter of time of paying attention to where our energy is. We try to set ourselves up with a good setup to be able to grab as much of the energy as we can. So sorry about my dog in the background. I'm keeping a unit up above A to be able to move back and forth between the 3 spawn points there. I also like to have that chopper there because it lets me do this here, where I can kind of sneak in. Again, at 80 energy, Rain of Fire, good AoE. It's essentially hitting all of the units that he had on there, and I'm really doing okay for what that is. I'm just weakening that force. He does make a very good push onto C, but I've got Pavium in. I'm going to use the target designator. I'm going to just decimate some troops. I've got the Ironclad firing. I could have moved those blood fuels over, and but that's about it. That's going to wrap that up. So we get the easy, cheeky victory. Really solid performance out of the deck, again in a 1v1 situation. So I'm really enjoying it. Some good strategies here that you guys are seeing. And again, if you stick to the basics, I think really every deck has some viability as long as you build a good power curve into it and you're comfortable using some synergies and some strategies. But get out there, don't lose the initial point fight. Always try to win the energy consumption fight, and if you can do that, make it to the mid, make it to the kind of the mid to late game. Once you get to that late game, you're going to see that you're just going to be able to set up your defenses. You're going to just be able to call in your high energy costing units, and from there, the battle should really take care of itself. So let me know what your thoughts. I know this is pretty late into this game, and Pavium's been out quite a while, but I did want to do a guide now that I've been kind of messing around and kind of fine-tuning some things. So hopefully you find it helpful. If you did, please make sure to like and comment, and if you're new, please do make sure to subscribe. I really do appreciate it. It really does help the channel out. So I've been Doc with Average Gamer, guys. Look forward to some more Halo Wars 2. We'll do some more deck guides and some leader builds here in just a little bit for some of the other leaders as well, and kind of refresh some things. And yeah, really enjoyed it. Again, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day, and we'll catch you in the next one.